Pittsburgh Steeler fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, senior editor behind thesteelcurtain.com with you for a Victory Sunday postgame podcast right here on behindthesteelcurtain.com. The Steelers win 19-13 in a crazy game with the Tennessee Titans at Heinz Field. If you're noticing on Facebook or on YouTube, there's only two of us because Big Dave Schofield was at the game. Hopefully you checked out on our podcast platform and on our YouTube channel some video from him there from section 122. But we still have Bryan Anthony Davis. What's up, Bryan? What do you think?
Jeff, I am so excited, and I know not everybody loves this, but I have got to share my thoughts in song. So, Steelers win. Steelers win. It's Christmas time in Steel City.
That's good. I like that. I like that rendition a lot. We should probably record that. Maybe you can talk to Kyle Kreis and get some. He can help you out there or something. Get some. But honestly, Bryan, knee-jerk reactions. We talked a little bit about this before we went on the air. What were you thinking throughout this game? Talk about a tale of two halves. Talk about a really crazy up and down game.
I'm so used to the first half being like this, and I'm so used to even going back to a couple days after Christmas last year when they played the Colts and came back in the second half. It seems like they're just going to come out in the second half and force mistakes and end up getting themselves in a position to win. So I know everybody wants the four quarters, and I know anybody could call the BS card on me, but I thought they were going to win this entire game.
I mean, I can't say that. To be honest, I cannot say that I was with you there. I never saw the Steelers shutting out the Titans in the second half. I mean, think about that. They were up 13-3 at halftime. The Steelers come roaring back, score 19 points. And we're going to talk about this every which way. So those of you that are just joining us, we're like, what did they talk about? Yeah, we haven't talked about anything. We do have a super chat to get up here. Chris G gives us $2. He's re-signed Hayden, the INT and game-winning hit and tackle. Was that play ruled a fumble or was that ruled an interception, Bryan? Do you know? I can check the stat line, but I want to know if you knew off the top of your head.
I think it ended up being an interception, but I'm not sure what the it kind of looked like a fumble, but since he's not down and he made a move, I kind of thought it was a fumble. So now I don't even know anymore.
ESPN has only one listed interception, and that was Joe Schobert. So that means that they would have ruled that a fumble and a fumble recovery for Joe Hayden. But still, a great game. Great to have him back. Let's get a couple more super chats up here. Tom Muir gives us $7. Here we go, Steelers. Here we go. $1 for each win. Omar needs to pay Joe his money. That's a tough call because Joe's getting up there in age. We'll put it that way. And he's been hurt a lot this season. Another super chat. Jeb Corp gives us 5 something. I'm not sure what that is. Cardiac Kids. And those are pounds. Hey, thanks.
He answered the question for you.
He knew how stupid I was. So he's like, I'll just put it in there for you so you can read it. There you go.
Jeff and international currency aren't always on the same page.
Jeff and a lot of things are not always on the same page. Let's put it that way. Arthur Steele gives us $1.99. Go Bros winning streak continues. That's right. I forgot about that when Big Bro Rich and Little Bro Dave are at the game sitting side by side. The Steelers have not So here we have a game where the Steelers are, like I said, just up and down, really struggling offensively in the first half. We're going to talk about the offense here in a second. We're going to look at things. But Bryan, let me ask you this question: could you give me any winner or game ball for someone on offense? Anyone?
Maybe. Well, I know you don't count Chris Boswell on offense. If you're going to come close to doing that, I would probably give it to Ben Roethlisberger just for the engineering of just not blowing up the field goal attempts. But if anything, maybe you give it to the offensive line.
That's tough. It's tough. It's really tough to give this any game ball or any props really to anyone on offense. The offense struggled to do much. Well, we'll put it that way. Let's get another super chat here. Robert Robles gives us $4.99 and says, do you guys have any idea why Ben Roethlisberger, BTR, sat down on the steps randomly? # team bad. Bryan, we talked about this when we went in the air. What are your thoughts on that? That was a really everyone saw it. CBS, this was after the quarterback sneak. He's got his sweatpants on. He goes down into the tunnel and you're thinking, oh crap, here we go. And it just shows him sitting down on the steps and then he's back on the sideline. Bryan, what were your thoughts?
You originally had your own thought on that. Mine was at first, just the emotion in it for Ben, and it looked like he was just collecting his thoughts. You know, when you're coming towards the end of the career, I mean, everybody's talking about the fact that this could be his last regular season, actually one of his last games, not his last game because they still play again, but he might be winding down, you might think, and he was just so in the moment at that time that he wanted to go in and just sit on the steps and reflect and maybe cry, maybe just be filled with emotion that and maybe it was just maybe he was talking to a higher power. I don't know what he was doing.
We know Ben's a religious guy. Maybe he was. I also thought maybe he was concerned about Pat Freiermuth. It was Pat Freiermuth that left the game with a pretty nasty concussion, and Ben was right there. And they have a connection, both on and off the field. He and Pat Freiermuth, their lockers are next to one another, so maybe that was it. I don't know. Very interesting scene though, and I'm sure one that he'll be asked about when he talks to the media on Wednesday. Tyler W gives us $5. Says, "Hey fam, had a great time with the Sco Bros, breathing in that sweet smell of victory." Tyler got to obviously meet the Sco Bros. That's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Wilson Pava gives us $4.99. He says, "Run a 30-minute practice before the game, then lie to the offense and tell them it's the second half to kick off." And then he says, "The Ben thing shows he's done this year." Sometimes I feel like we're reading into things too much, and part of me hates that CBS even caught that moment. Like, I hate that was even caught. You know what I mean, Brian? Does that make sense? Like, give the guy some privacy. He's obviously looking for it. Like, what, you know what I mean?
It's absolutely not Ben showing off for the cameras because he got away from the cameras for that. And I got to tell you, it is going to be an iconic image, especially if the Steelers do something really special this year. But that might be one of the images that you just don't forget. There was an image at the end of last season that we wanted to forget, but it was him sitting on the bench by himself and then with Pouncey. And it was something that you've seen a lot. And I think that was just something that he was trying to avoid, but he was just, I mean, when you're you know how it is when you're overpowered with happy emotions or any kind of emotions and you want to sit down and you want to just reflect and just breathe it all in. That might have been what he was doing.
Like I said, I don't know, but I'll tell you what, let's get into the numbers. Let's get into the stat line. Let's talk about Ben Roethlisberger. He finished with the following stat line: 16 of 25, 148 yards, 5.9 averages, no touchdowns except for one rushing, no interceptions, was sacked 3 times for an 80.1 rating. Brian, we're not giving out grades here, but if you were to talk about Ben Roethlisberger's game, happy, indifferent, what is it?
The W makes you happy. If there was an L attached, we'd probably be complaining. But with that whole thing, he did enough for the Steelers to win that game. He was able to control it enough for them to get the field goals, not make the mistakes when they were in range to get knocked out. So you're taking the win, but this is not anything you're going to put on his Hall of Fame resume.
No, not at all. I think that when you think about Roethlisberger's performance, you see this from Ben, especially late in his career when he does not have time. Early in the game, if he is pressured, you get this Ben with he's not willing to sit in the pocket. He's not ready to take those shots. Then you throw a defender rolling up on his knee. He's even less likely to sit there and take that shot. And so early on in this game, when the Steelers kind of struggled to keep the pressure off of him, you knew that this was going to happen. You kind of got the happy feet at times. I can't stand Tony Romo, but he was honestly, Ben should have done this. Ben, like, well, you're up in there in a heated booth. That's really easy for you to say there, Tony. Thanks for the input. But still, I thought Ben played a decent game. No one on offense, like we said earlier, no one on offense impressed at all, period. We're going to go through the entire list here. You'll be hard pressed to find a player that really showed out in any way, shape, or form. Let's go through this now. So Ben, it's 25 attempts, 16 completions. That's not great. That's not mine. And then here it gets even worse. The Steelers, Najee Harris, 12 carries for 18 yards, a 1.5 average. They rushed 17 total times for 35 yards, a 2.1 average. They did have a rushing touchdown with Ben Roethlisberger. The longest run was a 10-yard run to Deontay Johnson. Brian, this was really bad. The running game for the Steelers, I felt like this was almost like a season low in terms of not just production, but just overall, how capable are you to even muster anything on the ground? What are your thoughts on the running game?
So this is the first time I've done this all season. I'm going to say Najee Harris had a bad game today.
Yeah.
And it sure did not have a lot of holes, but the stuff he was trying to make out of nothing, and even when he was turning around, he was running backwards, it just did not look like a good game for 2-2 today. But I'm not, he's still that guy that is just a pounder. He's going to go ahead and he'll come up next week really fired up to try to erase this game because he's a competitor. I absolutely love him, but I'm not giving him I'm not putting him anywhere near a game ball today. I'm putting him on the dud list today.
Wasn't a good game, and definitely you saw him. Well, I'll be honest, it looked like he was in Alabama playing against some, really crappy college team. And he's like, well, the hole's not there in the middle, so I'm just going to bounce this outside and I'll have a big 25-yard gain and run out of bounds and everything will be great. Well, you can't do that in the National Football League, and you can't do that against a defense like Tennessee. They're really good tackling. They're rally tackling group. Look, if Tennessee is upset about this loss, it's not because of the defense. It's because of the offense and their inability to hold on to the football. So when you think about this game, no, I think you hit the nail right on the head. Najee Harris did not play well. We love him to death, but he didn't play well. And there was a shot of him during that last drive by Tennessee. The cameras went to Najee on the sideline, and he's sitting there and he looks absolutely disgusted. And I would guess that he's probably disgusted with himself. Just really bad play. You saw on some screen passes, he was not where he's supposed to be. It just wasn't good. It just wasn't good. You're going to have those games. We've talked about how this kid's been pro ready since he stepped onto the field, and he had a setback. This was not a good game for him, but still, nonetheless, they find a way to win. We'll put it that way. Now we're getting ready to talk about the pass catchers. It's important I put up this super chat here. Brandon King gives us $1.99. Says Muth holds on while unconscious, made up for last week. I guess if you want to look at it that way, that's fine. But I mean, Pat Freiermuth is as tough as they come. If you haven't figured that out yet, I mean, I think it was a reception he had in the first half where he caught it, made two guys miss, trucked another guy. Just Pat Freiermuth is going to be a really good tight end for the Steelers for a really long time. But let's talk about the pass catchers. Again, they only had 148 yards receiving. Deontay Johnson led the team with 5 catches on 5 targets for 38 yards. Freiermuth 4 catches on 4 targets for 37. James Washington 3 for 36 on 5 targets. Gentry 1 for 17. It's a big play by the big guy. And Chase Claypool 0 catches on 2 targets. What are your thoughts about the pass catchers here, Bryan?
The only thing that I could say about Claypool on that one was, I mean, yeah, it was a pass interference, which he may have caught that ball in the end zone. So that PI that took possibly a catch away from him, but nobody was spectacular. I did love the Gentry. Just after Muth goes out, Gentry comes in, and did you notice Gentry walking back to the huddle? Just sort of like this. I mean, he was like, yeah, that's right. And Muth's out, I'm coming in, I'll take care of business. And you kind of felt that way. But yet nothing absolutely spectacular on offense the whole day. And like I said, I didn't even think the offensive line was good, but I said, if you're going to give a game ball, maybe you give it to them because there was nobody to give it to. But the receivers know. Washington, a little disappointed with that turnover from Washington. Turnaround. I know he was trying to make something out of nothing. He did make up for that a little bit later, but it was still enough to win this game.
Thankfully, that Washington fumble was negated by that roughing the passer call against Roethlisberger, where the guy caught him low, and it was a penalty. Romo somehow was trying to defend the defender, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, when you go after knees.
Yeah, that's
no thanks.
That's going to be a call every time. But still, I mean, when you look at the pass catchers, I didn't see a game like this. Was just the offense was just so inept at times, and this includes the second half. When how many times did they get a turnover and the Steelers offense was unable to even put a first down and string together a first down, a series, anything. And then Chris Boswell comes in and kicks a field goal. At least 2 of the 4 I can think of that happened. And that's not good football. This offense has some huge questions to answer in terms of what they're thinking and play calling and things like that, based on the fact that, and I don't know, you're not going to get those answers this year. Heck, we're going into week 16, against the Kansas City Chiefs. If you don't know it by now, you're not going to know it. That's my personal philosophy. And so when I look at the pass catchers, because that's what we're talking about here, there's not this isn't Chase Claypool last week where there was a boneheaded play or a drop. Yeah, he had a drop on a screen, but my goodness, it probably was going to go for 3 yards anyways. But still, there are certain situations where you just find yourself scratching your head. I want to get this up on the screen here first. Justin Gall gives us 499. His great win. Watt, Hayden, and Boswell game balls. Yeah, those 3 definitely would be on the list for sure. Okay, let's talk about the offensive line here, Bryan. Again, they only gave up 3 sacks to Ben. However, when I look at the Titans quarterback hits, only 3. So I guess pass protection was better than I thought, but that running game was just atrocious. What are your thoughts on the offensive line?
Here I go again. It's good enough to win, Jeff. They're not going to get it completely figured out this season either. But as long as they don't break down like they did in the first half against the Minnesota Vikings, that they're going to give this team and Ben Roethlisberger opportunities to win this game. The holes weren't open for Najee. Najee wasn't doing much when holes were open. It just seemed like it was an off game on offense. And I think this is what we need to expect now for the remaining games of the season and, God willing, the playoffs, if that happens. So you've got to expect an ugly team. And, we talked about, are there such thing as an ugly win? No, it's a win. It's a beautiful win. Yeah, beautiful, crazy, beautiful, pretty ugly. That's really what it's got to be for the rest of the season. And that's the identity of this team. This is an identity that is made out of a team that is not going to make any highlight reel. They're just going to make it happen, and they found a way to make it happen.
Yeah, and this offensive half of the podcast is kind of dull because there's not much to talk about. I mean, they scored 1 touchdown, and that was a Ben Roethlisberger quarterback sneak. It took 2 of them. They eventually got it, which, by the way, I think Najee Harris got the ball over the plane on first down on that 1st and goal after the Claypool.
I thought he did too.
That second reach. Now, my wife adamantly disagrees, but she's the football expert in the family. I'll take her. I'll trust her judgment. But
I know your wife. I tell you what, I will trust her judgment too.
Yeah, I mean, she married me. Why wouldn't you? But still,
absolutely.
So still, I want to talk about Matt Canada. The play calling was, again, we'll say questionable at best. When you think about this game in retrospect, happy, indifferent, what do you think about the play calling?
I did not love the play calling at all in this game. I just thought it seems like the scripted plays at the beginning of the game, throw away the script. Seriously, if this is what you're going to get every single game and you're going to get 3 and outs, it wasn't a 3 and out the first drive because they had that first down right away. But if you're just going to be punting and bringing in Presley Harvin, who that's another conversation that we're going to probably have to have.
Little Press, by the way. I guess I call him now Little Press.
Little Press. All right. So he's Elvis on the toilet for me right now. But, with this whole situation, if this is what Matt Canada's working up, and the whole Bill Walsh thing of 1978 and on that became so beautiful with the scripted plays, I just don't think you've got a good script. This isn't like NCIS. This isn't like a special victims unit. This is Cop Rock. It's really bad. Throw that script away, Jeff. It's horrible.
Oh my gosh, Cop Rock. Okay, so I think what I'd like to do is if I could go back and watch the game again, and maybe I'll have someone like Jeffrey Benedict looked into this. I want to see the Steelers' success, or should I say failures, on second down. How many times, Bryan, did you see them maybe run for 3? Maybe they do a jet sweep run for a couple yards, and it was second down that killed the Steelers. Negative run. Remember the awkward, incomplete pass? Remember that shovel pass on the first drive? Like after the pass to Deontay Johnson, it was second down when it was like, what in the heck was that? That was, I believe that was a second down play. I think second downs killed this Steelers team. And if it's that noticeable to me, I am not a football expert. I am not an X's and O's guy. But if I'm sitting on the couch like, boy, this offense just sucks on second down, then tell me that other teams aren't going to know that as well. Matt Canada has a lot of learning to do. I'll put it that way. Let's call a spade a spade. He is a first-time play caller in the National Football League. For those that are wondering, I don't think he gets fired after this season. Bryan, do you agree?
Nice. I absolutely agree. I don't think he's going to get fired either, but something's going to change, and it might just have to be the growing pains of not having your guys in there.
Yeah, that's right. And they gave Randy Fiedner a second season. They can give Matt Canada a second season for crying out loud.
They gave, man, that second season and the third season seemed like 70 seasons. My gosh, I was praying for guys like Ray Sherman and Kevin Gilbride.
Oh, don't say that. That was bad.
Ron Earhart.
Steel Dog 88 gives us $5. It seems Ben lost trust in Claypool after the drop on the screen, targeted Washington more afterwards. Now, I don't know what the leash is like for, I don't know what the leash is like for Chase Claypool at this point, but maybe a good point. Tom Muir gives us a $2. Said, you mean short press? No, little press, because it's the opposite of big, little, and big, it's not big press. He looks awful. We're going to talk about special. Go ahead.
I'm just calling it depress.
That's a good one, deep. Hey, I want to talk. We have about 10 minutes or so left in the first part. Offense, there's really not much to talk about other than what we've already talked about. For me, I want to ask you about the officiating. There were some plays in this game where it's like this every game. Every time I watch any NFL game, where I'm like, oh my gosh, how did they make that call? It's almost like when the running back was down on the ground and then Cam Hayward comes up with the ball and they give the Steelers the ball. You're like, what play are you watching? He was clearly down. Nothing was more egregious than the spot on that 4th down pass, 4th and 6, that Joe Hayden comes up, tackles the player at least a yard short of the stick, and they end up measuring, and it's this close. It's this close. For those that are listening on podcast form, I can't have my fingers closer without touching each other. And so it's like, what in the world is that? Bryan, talk about the officiating in this game.
I thought it was subpar. I thought there were situations where if I were the Titans, I'd be angry. If I were the Steelers, I was definitely going to be angry. And
what would the Titans have to be angry about?
You know what? That interception very easily could have, not the interception, the fumble very easily. With his shin, and they were talking about it at the end.
Here we go, shin.
So, that's what they're going to be complaining about. And I think there's something else that they could complain about too. But that was a horrible spot. Absolutely. And
horrible.
I just I couldn't believe it. And I think there was another situation where they got the first down when they got the first down by the nose. I thought that was a bad spot.
Yep.
That should have been, 2 spots were really bad. And I was surprised that the flag wasn't thrown on that.
For me, I always say it's a $1 billion industry. They use sticks and chains to measure and 95-year-old men to watch where the football is in a scrum of 22 individuals. Yeah, I think there's nothing to question here. Like the Ben Roethlisberger QB sneak. How in the heck did they have any idea where that football was? That's one of those where, hey, ball's over the line, touchdown. Yeah, I don't know. Wilson Pava gives us $1.99. Says Canada isn't at Fiedner levels bad yet. Not even close. I agree with that. I don't think he's at that anyways, but the roughing passer, everyone talks about the roughing passer on Ben. What about the fact that, you think about the other hit on Ben that wasn't called on the RPO? And then there was Chase Claypool on the drop screen. He clearly drops the ball. Guy comes over and pops him. I said this on Twitter. I said last week, Chase Claypool pushed a guy's face mask with his finger, and he gets a 15-yard flag. They're out there popping guys late. Hey, that's what you're going to call it. That's call both ways. But my goodness, there's no consistency. Bryan, don't you agree with that?
Yeah, it was really strange. And I kind of thought I cannot believe how egregious Ben got hit on a handoff. And yeah. I know it's RPO, but on a handoff where he just was destroyed and there was nothing given back to him on that one. Claypool might have dug himself into a little bit of a hole, not just with Steeler fans, not just with the organization, which I think he's going to get out of it. But now he is looked upon across the league, probably by officials too, where they're going to pigeonhole him as a guy that is going to be a little bit of a problem, and they're not going to give him benefit of the doubt on stuff like that.
For me, I think about, again, all I want is consistency with the officiating. That's all I want. I don't want to sit down and watch, let's say, the Indianapolis Colts and the New England Patriots play and see a play called when maybe, Carson Wentz gets hit in a certain way. And then that same play happens against the Steelers and it doesn't get called. That's all I want. That's all I want is consistency here, folks. I mean, outside of the spots, I've always hated the spotting in the NFL has always been atrocious in my opinion, but still that's neither here nor there. Well, the fun part is going to be talking about the defensive side of the ball, which we're going to do in part 2 of this podcast. If you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube, don't go anywhere. We aren't going anywhere. If you're on podcast form, go over to part 2. We're going to talk about defense, special teams, coaching, clock management, and give our final thoughts. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. All right, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome back to the second part of the BTSC postgame podcast. The Steelers win, beat the Tennessee Titans 19-13 in a crazy up-and-down game. I'm Jeff Hartman, senior editor at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Joining me as always, Bryan Anthony Davis. Bryan, it's time to talk about some fun stuff. We're not talking about the offense anymore. We're talking about the defense. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense, they shut out the Tennessee Titans in the second half. They do not allow a single point. They have 4 takeaways in this game. There are a lot of bright spots to talk about, but I want to start off. I mean, you talk about fumble recoveries. You had Joe Hayden had one, TJ Watt had one, Minkah Fitzpatrick had one, Joe Schobert had an interception. Every single one of those takeaways was necessary, Bryan, but what's kind of your knee-jerk reaction to the defense before we start talking about numbers and all the minutia?
Man, when push came to shove, they shoved hard. And they knock balls loose and making interceptions. Gosh, you could have thrown in Devin Bush should have had maybe a pick 6. I mean, he made a nice play on that ball. It just he just didn't catch it. But man, I really love the defense. Now there are some holes. I mean, my gosh, they're still giving up a lot of rush yards.
Yes,
Deonta Foreman, I think he's a very good player. So you did not give up yards to a scrub player. So if you think you did because you just didn't hear of him, this was a guy that was supposed to be the next great Texans running back, and he had his knee just completely blown out and as a rookie, and it took him a lot of time to get back. And now I think he's 25. This might be his 3rd or 4th year, but he's getting another chance, and behind a very good line, he was doing some really nice things. I think he is tough as nails. So I get it now. He's not Derrick Henry, but you did not give up over 100 yards to a bad running back or a true second stringer, Jeff. I just want to go ahead and say that. But I felt comfortable with the defense. I felt that they were going to make stops when it was 4th and 1, and the crowd made that huge noise because Foreman, who looked really hurt, comes back in, and everybody in the stadium knows he's getting the ball. And the Steelers knew he was going to get the ball. And I had no doubt when he came in, I'm like, yeah, they're going to stop him. Like I said, you could call BS on me, but I just had belief in this entire game that this team was going to pop up. At one point, I'm like, I can't believe this is happening because I believe, and they usually fall flat on their face. But today, it was just like they kept on making things happen. The guys that we bellyache about were making things happen.
No, you're right. I mean, you think about the plays that were made. You talk about guys like Schobert has been criticized, highly criticized. Taco Charlton was the one that got his big mitt on that pass, which tipped up in the air, and Schobert brings in. Joe Hayden comes out of nowhere. Who caused that fumble? Was it Cam Sutton? Is that? I think that's who it was. That was. I don't know.
Cam?
I don't think it was Minkah. I don't think it was Minkah, but I could be wrong. That's a good question.
Gosh, I don't think it was Cam, but I might be wrong.
Okay, Wilson Pava gives us $4.99. Says defensive player of the year, maybe even MVP. Is TJ already an all-time Steeler great? Best pass rusher in our history. Also, Joe Hayden is a big and underrated key player. Yes, congratulations to TJ Watt. He breaks James Harrison's record. But Bryan, an all-time Steeler great already? What do you think?
Yeah, come on. I think we've got to say it because he makes this team different. If he retired right now, he would be an all-time Steeler great because he's very high up on the sack list. and among Steeler greats. You know, he is a player that just, oh my gosh, he stops a lot of things. And he is the heart and soul of that defense, along with two other hearts and two other souls, Minka and Cam. But when this guy's out, you kind of feel like this team is lost when he's not there. So another thing about TJ Watt, you know, sure, he broke the single season sack record. I want him to get one more to break the 17.5 that we talked about, the unofficial record from 1961.
Big
Daddy. Gene Lipscomb, great name. But the thing about TJ, think about a guy like Terrell Davis. The Broncos are going to call Terrell Davis one of the greatest players in their history. And what did he play for 6 seasons?
Yeah, it wasn't a long career. We'll put it.
He's an all-time Bronco great. Now, Super Bowls were involved in that, and I get that, but I kind of think that you've got to throw him in the mix as a great on this team. If there's a 90th anniversary team in 2 years for this team, TJ's on it.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, he's doing things that no one ever thought was possible from the pass rushing perspective. I mean, and that's like Bill Cowher. I listened to the postgame show before Mike Tomlin's press conference started, and he said, and they showed James Harrison had a video congratulating TJ Watt on breaking his record. And Cowher said, you know, he's a long line of great pass rushers for the Steelers in the sack era. And you talk about Kevin Green, Greg Lloyd. You're talking about Joey Porter, James Harrison, obviously, Lamar Woodley. It's a really big accomplishment. I don't think if he stays healthy, there's any way he won't break Big Daddy's record of 17.5, the unofficial Steelers mark. I don't know. The ribs scare me, though, Bryan, does it not? I mean, that he was holding his ribs midsection. I was like, yeesh, he's not getting a shot right now, but I mean, he's tough as they come. I don't want anyone questioning his toughness, but that's got to concern you a little bit, right?
Yeah. But is he an Energizer buddy? Because he just takes a licking and keeps on ticking, or where is that something else? Do I have
takes a licking and keeps on ticking?
That's Timex. That's Timex.
Is it? Yeah,
no, that's a Timex watch. Okay, man, I my advertisement trivia is really bad today. But no, I mean, I think he's the kind of guy that if he's breathing and able to put on cleats. By the way, his cleats were cool today. If you didn't see his cleats,
look.
Oh my gosh, they had Clark Griswold and
are you serious?
And A Christmas Story, yeah.
I didn't see. That's awesome.
So the thing about TJ, yeah, as long as his heart is beaten and he can put a helmet on, and you let him, you don't shut him down, he's going out there. He's that kind of player.
Well, let's talk about some of these pass rushers that contributed. Alex Highsmith, he drew a holding call. It was good to see him kind of get into the quarterback. Chris Wormley had a sack, even though he left the game with a groin injury, shocker, and wasn't able to return. TJ Watt did his thing. Cam Hayward was putting pressure. How nice was it to see Charlton get his hand on that pass, like I mentioned, and also Derek Tushka getting the ball out of Ryan Tannehill's hands on a pass rush. I'm not saying that Taco and what does Jeffrey Benedict call him on his
Taco Tushka?
Taco Tushka, there it is. I'm not about to say that they're like great backups, but it was good to see them actually have some contribution. So when I look at the stat line, they had 4 sacks of Ryan Tannehill for 36 yards and 7 quarterback hits. So Bryan, pretty impressive day for the pass rush, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, this was the time, one of the first times this season when I looked at the defense and I said, there's the swarm. There's the team that we've been begging for coming back.
It's that meeting at the quarterback. I used to love that call. I think it was Bill Hogan would always say they had a meeting at the quarterback, and a bunch of people were there. Like, you didn't know who got the sack because there were that many guys around him. They had that a couple times today, so it's good to see for sure the pass rush. But let's talk about the secondary. The pass rush was good. The secondary. Let's look at Ryan Tannehill. He finished 23 of 32, 153 yards, a 4.8 average. He did throw that interception to Schobert, sacked 4 times for a 68.9 rating. This was about as bad as I've seen Ryan Tannehill play, and I remember him playing in Miami. What were your thoughts on the Steelers' secondary, their pass defense in general, Bryan?
You know what? I thought there was a lot of no-name goodness in this game from the secondary. I saw some things from Witherspoon again that I liked. I saw some things from Mollett. You know what? I don't know if I don't know if he's anonymous. I don't even know if he's out there. I don't know where Norwood is. I haven't seen a lot of Norwood lately. I don't know if the fact that Witherspoon and Mollett are keeping him aside. But I really liked some of the things that I saw. I will say this. I thought this could be against the rush. It could be, as a defensive back. But I thought Mr. Terrell Edmonds, Fedarius, had an amazing game. And I thought he looked very good in this football game as well. Of course, you had Hayden come up big at a point. Now, Hayden got bailed out when when Julio Jones would have scorched him in the first quarter. But Minka is a guy that not a lot of people were talking about for the game ball today, but man, Minka was everywhere.
Yes. And Tomlin talked about him after the game and saying, like, how many times did he come up? He was asked about what's the difference in the run defense. We'll talk about that in a second, but what's the difference between the run defense against Minnesota? And he said, you got to look at number 39. He said, how many times did he come up and make a tackle? He's probably going to lead this team in tackles. Just think about that. A safety leading your team in tackles potentially. Because when I think about, let me look at the stat line quickly. Minka Fitzpatrick, 14 total tackles, led the team. Terrell Edmonds was second with 10. Your safety should not be leading your team in tackles, folks, just so you know. That's not good football. But still, Minka was great. Terrell Edmonds, you brought him up. He had a great tackle, but the play before that, it was a tackle for loss. He blew up a little screen pass. The one thing, if that guy had ball skills, oh my goodness, no one would be complaining about him being a first-round pick. Yeah. But his ball skills are awful. Like the play before that blown up tackle for loss, if the ball went right through his hands, you look at plays like that, you look at plays like Devin Bush, you had 4 takeaways already. You could have had easily 6, and it would have just been a dominant performance, even more so than it already was, I should say. So the defense did look good, but there were some issues, and that came in the run defense department. The Titans rushed for 201 yards, 42 carries, 201 yards, 4.8 average, 1 touchdown. That was a quarterback sneak by Ryan Tannehill. And Donta Foreman led the way with 22 carries for 108. So, and this guy was banged up, by the way. So what do you think about the rush defense, Bryan?
The story keeps on going. It's not nice. You lose Alualu, you lose Tuitt, and you're bringing some guys in, and you lost another guy this week that was helping things out a little bit, and who I really think is going to be a guy that's going to be in in the future, Montravius Adams. He was out. I like Wormley, but they're just getting gashed.
It doesn't help that Isaiah Buggs was downgraded to out either on Saturday. So when you lose Montravius Adams, you're thinking, okay, Buggs is coming back. He's questionable. Nope, he's out. Then you lose Wormley, and now you're relying on, thank goodness, Carlos Davis, your son, was active for this game. Because if not, you would have been down to Henry Mondeau and Isaiah Loudermilk playing maximum snaps, and that's not anything anyone wants when it comes to rush defense. The Steelers' defensive front did get kind of creative. They had to, out of necessity. They were moving linebackers around. There was a lot of times you saw an outside linebacker. I saw Taco Charlton on the middle. I saw TJ Watt in the middle at times. I saw Alex Highsmith in the middle of times. They're trying everything that they have available to them to try and stop the run. It's just not always working. This was a tough game. And Bryan, let me ask you a question. For the second straight game, I keep on saying the same thing. If these teams that are running the ball with such success, why in the world would they ever throw it? Like, why throw the ball? You're averaging 4.8 yards a carry. You rush for over 200 yards. Why would you dial up these throws? It doesn't make any sense. Bryan, can you explain it?
Why did Kirk Cousins do that last week?
That's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. I don't get it.
Yeah. It's just, man, you have something going and then you say, oh, we got to go for the kill. No, don't go for the kill. Do what you've got. Keep on going. You don't need that one pass to go for the kill. You're going to kill them more when you are draining the clock. My goodness, time of possession killed the Steelers in the first half of this game. And then teams stopped doing it. What is it? Do you have to get cute? Do you feel like you just have to knock them out when you don't? You just keep on doing what you did. Don't change when it's good.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me at all. The only thing I could say is that you think about that 9.5-minute drive that the Titans had at the end of the second quarter. And we'll talk about time management here in a second. But still, that 9.5-minute drive, what did you ended in a field goal? It took all that time off. Listen to this time of possession. Time of possession, Tennessee 39 minutes and 8 seconds to Pittsburgh's 20 minutes and 52 seconds. They had the ball for 19 extra minutes. It's over an extra quarter. It's like a quarter they possessed the ball more than this. It's a horrible stat line. But still, you look at the numbers and they're skewed because of the takeaways, and the Steelers had short fields and they don't have to possess the ball as long. But I mean, my gosh, I mean, I'm watching the game like, why are they throwing the ball? Why would anyone throw the ball against Pittsburgh? You know, it doesn't make any sense. I'm not going to complain about it because it equated to the Steelers winning the game, but still, I don't know. Steel Dog 88 gives us $5. He broke out the Devin Bush jersey with good faith this week. Made some decent plays. Bryan, what were your thoughts on Devin Bush? This is something that kind of he's putting together a couple good games. I know he dropped the interception, but still seems to be reacting a little bit better. Has a little bit more spark to his game. You're noticing him more for good things. What are your thoughts on Devin Bush?
I really think consciously he is really trying to get himself back together, and there's got to be something going on inside that locker room or inside his apartment where he's just studying and working, because it seems like he is starting to get things together. And I have a feeling that that he's listening to he's reading the comments and listening to shows and hearing the criticism, which you always tell me, Bryan, quit reading comments. But maybe it's something where it's just like, man, I have more pride in myself than this, and I need to get it together. And it seems like he really is working to get it together.
Yeah, I mean, it's as long as I'm seeing improvement, like that's all I want to see. You know, no steps backwards at this point. If he reached rock bottom and this is his wave, he's kind of digging his way back. He's digging his way out of the hole. Like that's fine for me. As long as we're seeing improvement, that's what I want to see from Devin Bush. And I definitely do think that we saw that. Is he dynamic? Is he at the point where he's like Ryan Shazier back before the injury in 2007? No, he's not. Is he Devin Bush back in 2019, his rookie year, or early in 2020 before the injury? No. But is he working his way back there? And I think the answer to that is yes. And so for that, I'm happy with Devin Bush and where he is right now. Let's also talk about Joe Hayden, because he was another player that I thought played extremely well. It was a welcome addition. You know, here we are in week 15. He hasn't played since week 11. I think he got injured in, actually, it might have been week 10 that he got injured in the Detroit game. Was that when he got hurt, Bryan?
It was week 10. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's been out for that long, and what a difference he makes. A lot of fans are saying, you know, hey, sign Joe. Are you saying sign Joe? I mean, the guy also has been out since week 10. I mean, let's keep that in mind, Bryan.
You know, what I'm saying about Joe Hayden is embrace the fact that you've got a Joe Hayden too, to add on to the three guys that I talked about being heart and soul. And I really did make a mistake by not saying there's a fourth guy, and that's Joe Hayden when he's out there. So yeah. Joe Hayden is he brings an extra level to this team, and just watching his celebration after the game, man, a lot of emotions came out of when he did that scream and the pose, and a lot of emotions came out of Joe. He was so ecstatic, so happy. The frustration of being out, he was letting that out, and he was also proclaiming to the world, I've still got it. Yeah. And he believes in this team. He loves this team.
Absolutely. He loves the team. He loves the town, loves the fans. I want to take a look at the box score here one last time and see if there's any other players that need to be mentioned. Minkah Fitzpatrick, like I said, 14 total tackles, 12 solo, Edmonds with 10, Schobert with 7 and an interception. Cam Hayward was credited with a half a sack. TJ Watt with 1.5 sacks. Derek Tushka actually got a credit for a sack on his strip. His hit of Ryan Tannehill. Chris Wormley, he had a sack as well. So the Steelers were all over the quarterback. I thought that Cam Hayward played a good game outside of the fact that he maybe not had the splash plays that most fans have come to expect from him. But any other notables you want to mention, Bryan, before we move on to the coaching staff?
Well, I just want to make a comment. You just said that TJ Watt has 1.5 sacks, and I read that was an upgrade, that he had been upgraded. So now that it's reading 1.5, he has tied 17.5. He has tied Big Daddy.
Nice. So there we go. So 17 and a half. He has the official and now tied the unofficial. Only needs another half sack to set a new mark for Steelers history, not just the sack era, if you want to call it that. So for me, let's talk about the coaching staff. I want to talk about one in particular, and that's Mike Tomlin. And I'm not a Mike Tomlin hater. You know this. If anyone listens to my podcast knows, I'm not a Mike Tomlin apologist either. I think he's a good coach. I think that he has his warts, and one of his warts is time management. The end of the first half, I'm sitting there watching this unfold, this 9.5-minute drive, and I'm sitting there the entire time thinking to myself, what is going on? Why in the world are they not calling timeouts? Does he think this is like text messaging where or like, your cellular minutes where you get to roll over to the next month? Does he not know that hey, use them or lose them, bud? This is like vacation time. Like, you got to use it. And he didn't call timeouts. The Steelers end up getting, what was it, a 56-yard field goal from Boswell, which comes up like a few yards short. I was stunned, absolutely stunned that the Steelers weren't saying it. And this wasn't a situation where the Titans would have gained anything from having extra time. You know what I mean? This wasn't a situation where if you call timeout like 140, that you're like, oh, now we're giving the Titans extra time. What a stupid call. No, you're giving your offense a chance if they score a touchdown, or they're definitely going to get a field goal. I thought that was as bad as it gets for Tom, and I'm sure other people will bring up other situations. But Bryan, what are your thoughts on the coaching staff? You can talk about that situation if you want. Anything's on the table right now.
Absolutely. And that was where I was like, oh my gosh, Mike. I mean, maybe sometimes I am a Tomlin apologist. I'm probably a Tomlin apologist a lot, but you can't look at that and say, oh, I know what I'm doing here. I mean, no, just trust me. I mean, I've got a plan. I mean, what are you doing to possibly just not calling timeouts to kneel on the ball? I mean, that's just giving up and going in and saying, okay, it's next half. The NFL now is a situation where you can be down 35 seconds and having the ball kicked off to you and have a lot of hope to win the game. And we're seeing it so much. I mean, this isn't like the 1980s and 70s when if you were leading with 5 minutes left, game was over. It was absolutely over. Now, I mean, gosh, less than a minute, no problem. You've got quarterbacks that can go down the field. And they got down the field enough to give him a 56. And the way Boz has been kicking this year, man, I hate to even put that a mark on his stats, because it was a perfect kick. Yep. It was just short. I think only a couple yards, like you said. Yeah. But put him in position. Take a timeout. Don't let them. They ran the clock down, and the Steelers just let them do it. If the Steelers lose this game, especially by a field goal at the end, by a touchdown and extra point at the end, there's going to be a lot of complaints about not getting that field goal. And it's not going to be on Boz. It's going to be all on the coaching staff and Mike Tomlin. Yeah. And people will be calling for his head more and more and more.
It's like Sean Manahan says in the live chat. I want to put this out. He said his reasoning was he was concerned with putting pressure on them to score, to hold it to 3. That is the dumbest excuse. Now, Sean, this is not you. This is Tomlin. That is the dumbest excuse I've ever heard. Like, you might as well just say I made a mistake. I would have much rather heard Mike Tomlin go to the podium. He was asked about it and said, that's on me. That's on me. I never thought it was going to take that long, blah, 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 whatever, but it's on me. I would have much rather heard that than had this. And Justin Gall gives us 499. He says, rare clock management error by Tomlin. Not sure is that rare. And he said, significant, worst that I can remember. So like you said, Bryan, it's a really good idea. That there's a good thought that if they would have lost this game, that should have been brought up. Steel Dog 88 gives us $2 of Tomlin. If Tomlin doesn't call timeout, who can step into? I don't know if anyone can just step in and call timeout.
Who's your defensive captain? It's Hayward, isn't it?
Cam? Yeah.
Well, he could have done it, but that's a problem.
That's on the coach. That's on the coach. Yeah. Don't push that off on players. It's on the coach.
Yeah, because if you do that, then my gosh, you're usurping the power of the coach, and then there's a big problem, and now you're a renegade out there. You can't do that. You got to respect the coach in that move.
Yeah. Outthinking yourself is what that's called. Completely outthinking yourself. I do want to say that for Keith Butler and the defensive front that he's having to work with, I thought that they blitzed more. They had good timely blitzes. You saw Joe Schobert come in. He was the one that forced Ryan Tannehill to throw the ball quickly. I believe that was on a fumble where I think that might have been the play that actually Joe Hayden ended up getting that fumble recovery. I'm not sure, but they were throwing some blitzes out there. I think that absolutely I want to give some credit to Keith Butler, even though the defensive front is not where it should be. He also doesn't have the majority of his players available. Bryan, want to talk about the coordinators at all?
No, I think we talked ad nauseum on the offensive side about the coordinators. I don't have too much of a problem with what Butler and even Austin, what they're working with there. They're not working with a complete set, and they're getting enough out of it, which I got to give them credit for the way that they handled this game on the defensive side of the ball coaching.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the special teams because I want to spend some time there. Presley Harvin continues to disappoint me, and I was a big press supporter. We all know this. He finishes the day with 5 punts, an average of 39.8, only one inside the 20, along a 51, but there were a couple that were just, I mean, how long are the Steelers going to put up with this all season? Give them a chance to get better next season. Bryan, what are your thoughts on Little Press?
Yeah, they're not making a change now. They probably feel that they can work through it, but there's going to be an open competition in 2022. But for 3 games left, and then you throw in the hope that there's a playoff game, you can't be shanking punts like that. I don't know if you've noticed it, but I've come up with a name for his punting. It's called the Crank and Shank Tour. Because he'll crank one. I mean, he'll crank a beauty and then he'll shank a couple more. So you don't want to call him Big Press right now. I'm calling him Crank and Shank.
Crank and Shank. I love that. I actually like that. Crank and Shank. That's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely someone out there says, Dave uses somewhere out there, Jordan Berry's laughing at Jeff. He probably is. He's having a good season compared to Crank and Shank. So, but Chris Boswell continues to be, Mr. Steady Eddie. I know he missed that 49-yarder in Minnesota, and that was definitely felt like an aberration, and it was, and he was perfect except for that 56-yarder. He was 4 for 5 for field goals. He was 1 for 1 for extra points. You can't say much better, but I got to bring it up, though. I mean, my goodness, the returns, the 55-yard punt return by Chester Rogers, the special teams early in this game, you're watching Presley Harvin kick the ball 30 yards. You're watching them give up 55-yard returns. You're seeing penalties on the special teams. Special teams early in this game was absolutely atrocious, Bryan, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. Man, when I saw him break through, then I saw the flag. I'm like, oh, okay, good. It's coming back. Because when there's a flag on a big punt return like that, it's on the return team and your kicking team. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yep. It was that kind of day. But still bad. It was bad, and people want to blame Danny Smith. He's not the one out there shanking punts, and he's not out there missing tackles. And so say what you want, and the coaches can only do so much. I feel like a special teams coordinator can only do so much compared to the other ones. He's out there like, hey, guys, stay in your lanes, shed the blocks, make the tackles, block. Just bad. It's just bad all the way around. But somehow, some way, with all the negatives that we talked about, giving up 200 yards, barely doing anything good offensively, special teams was really bad. They found a way to win the game. They had 4 takeaways, and they find a way to win. They're 7-6-1. The playoff hopes remain alive. The Bengals are currently playing as we record this, so we'll see how that pans out. The Ravens are currently playing as we speak, and the Browns play, I believe, on Monday at 5 p.m., so a lot can change. But, Bryan, let's do some final thoughts. What are your final thoughts?
Wow, you're going into Christmas with a win. That's got to feel really good. You know what you have with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's time to embrace this team now. It's time to embrace the fact that they are a 2 a.m. team. Yep, I'm bringing them back up. This is a 2 a.m. team. They're playing ugly. They're not on your Christmas card, but this is their identity, And one thing about the Steelers is they're going to fight. They are going to fight. They're going to claw. They're going to scratch. And they're going to come out with this win. And you're going to leave feeling exhilarated. You're going to worry about next week. Then you're going to feel exhilarated in some way again because they're going to make it interesting. You can have that boyfriend or girlfriend that is just boring, and at the end they come through, or you could have the one that picks you up with a leather jacket and a motorbike and scares the living bejeebers out of you, and you almost die a few times, and at the end it just doesn't work out. Well, sometimes that team's going to work out, and it's going to be, you're going to find that diamond in the rough, and that's what the Steelers are. With all their warts, there's so much beauty there. Embrace that beauty, and happy holidays. And you get to go and unwrap gifts with the Steelers that won last week.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on that, my final thoughts are that the Pittsburgh Steelers found a way to win this game. They are still alive. And if this team has shown you anything so far this year, it's that very rarely, I can only think of one occasion where you're thinking this game is done. And that was against Cincinnati in week 12. We all thought that on the Thursday nighter in week 14 in Minnesota. And what'd they do? Came storming back, making plays, almost pulled out the win. So I know what Steeler fans are thinking right now. You're thinking, oh, here comes Kansas City in Arrowhead. This is going to be a loss. Says who? Says who? You never know. If the Steelers defense can continue to take the ball away the way they have the last 2 weeks, at 6 takeaways in 2 weeks, if you count, Witherspoon's interceptions the week prior, this team is going to be capable of taking, maybe just get the offense going in a little bit. I don't need a lot, just a little bit, but we'll see. All right. So for all the 300 plus people on YouTube and Facebook that are watching us live, we appreciate all of you for being here live. We want to wish everyone here a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays. Hopefully you check out our Merry Steelers Christmas podcast on our Steelers platform, our podcast platform, wherever you get your podcasts, or Steelers or Behind the Steel Curtain. Subscribe, follow so that you don't miss a thing. All right, that does it for us. We'll be back next week, 4:25 p.m. kickoff, the day after Christmas. Have a great holiday, everyone. We will see you next week. Go Steelers.